This week, I gotta get something off my chest. And a main ghost of the Obsidian, Royal Connaught Hotel in downtown Hamilton. This is an all Hamilton show. And there's a main reason for it. First off, it is my home city, so I have a connection to it, obviously. But the second reason is I'm not a fan of the current state of my downtown core. I am born and raised in this city, so I have a very deep connection to it. And the downtown Hamilton core, there's a real beauty to it. Even when it was really bad. I mean, it had this energy that surrounded it that comes from a history. People who grew up in the city who are older than me, who saw the original beautiful Victorian buildings that were down there, who remember the shops that line the streets, knew how unique it was. And I think they're the best judges of what's going on today. I came in a little bit later on. I'm definitely not a spring chicken, but I didn't see those Victorian buildings. They were gone. The old demolition ball of the 1970s took many of them away. And the shops were gone, replaced by places like Jackson Square. And that energy is starting to come back. I'm a very positive thinking person, and I can see what is coming down the pipe for the future. But we do have a problem. And that's what I want to talk about today. So the current state of the downtown core, in my opinion, is in some ways, disgraceful. Because there's a solution there. I mean, there has to be. And I know we're not the only city in the world experiencing this. This seems to be a problem that's happening worldwide. I've heard stories, California is very bad for it as well. And I am referring to the homeless crisis that is currently going on. Now, when it comes to the city of Hamilton, I have a unique point of view. I am the only one that I know about, the only person that is attempting to bring tourism into the core at night. I know there's the one-off events like the Art Crawl and whatnot, but me sticking to Gore Park, me being in the center of it all and going up near where the YM and YWCAs are located, I can see this firsthand. And it's not like, there's plenty of people with open shops. I'm taking people through the more darker parts of the downtown core because that's where the ghost stories are. So this gives me a unique point of view, and I'm doing it regularly. I've been doing it regularly for, almost 20 years. Now, I have to state a disclaimer, because I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea, that when I'm talking about what I'm talking about, I'm not focusing any anger or any shame or anything along those lines towards the homeless people themselves. Now, do I wish that they had a better view of life and that they, maybe felt motivation to make themselves better? I do. I do wish that. I wish that for everyone. Anyone who is in my life, any of my loved ones, and just, people in general. I do wish the best for them. And I do know deep down, no matter how much some people might believe that it's okay, it's not. Because they are slowly killing themselves. And, I don't want this to become political in any way. I just want to, get my point of view out. And I don't know if it's going to cause any change. That would be nice if it did, but at least I said it. And I know in my heart that I said it. So this is not against the people themselves. Because they have gone down a certain path that I know wholeheartedly that if I was, them, if I was raised the way they were, if I was in the same situation that they were, that it is very possible that that would be me. And I know that because we're all just human. We all have the same types of feelings, the same types of thoughts. So I don't disparage them in any way. They need help. And I know that for a fact. So just please understand that as I get into what I'm about to say, that I do feel for them, and I want them to be able to become better and to stop killing themselves with drugs, alcohol, whatever is causing it. But I have to say what it felt like. And as I was walking my group through the core, this is going back last Friday. I forget the date, but it's in July of 2022. And as I was walking a group, it was a smaller group, which usually means that some of the more inebriated folks will feel emboldened to come close. So I had maybe like 10 or so people. If it was like a group of 20 or 30, then they usually stay away because it's a very large group. But if it's a smaller group, they might come too close. And I was a little worried about that. But I mean, when I was standing in front of the Royal Connaught, where we start, and I was looking out, it didn't look too bad from there. So I just went with it. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, most are respectful. Most kind of just stick to themselves. They're, on whatever trip they're on, or they're drunk or whatever it is, they'll just stay with themselves. But the feeling I had walking through it, it's just being surrounded by insanity, for lack of a better term. Like, I'll give you an example. It's like, hearing people yelling and screaming in the distance, yelling obscenities. And there was a couple of kids on the tour group as well, so that doesn't sit well with me as a business owner. But it also doesn't sit well with me as a city resident to think that, our city officials think that this is okay. Because, the kids in my group are not the only kids in the downtown core. So yelling obscenities, punching rocks. And I don't know if it's something to do with the drug. I believe it's opioids that causes them to kind of just... It's the weirdest thing to see. They're hunched over. So they're actually like... I can shape it like a square. They're hunched over at their lower back. And first off, I don't know, like, it's amazing that they can do that they have the muscle give to be able to... It's almost like a contortionist, but they're completely hunched over and just kind of swaying back and forth. And if I looked at that with new eyes and I was like, I've never seen it before, I would be very disturbed by that. And they're just kind of swaying, they're looking up to the sky. And I'm not talking about one or two. I mean, just walking through Gore Park, at least 20. They definitely outnumbered the group that I was bringing in there. So just being surrounded by that, it reminded me something. Now, I spent some time inside the Hamilton Psychiatric Hospital, the HPH, the old mansion on the hill, the building at Fennel and West 5th. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Before they put the new hospital in, that building was still there. And when I was in high school, I don't know, I was just going back 25 years ago. So I'm in high school. They offered a co-op program for, I think I was in grade 11 or grade 12. And they offer a co-op program to kind of get you ready for college, because co-op was huge back then. I think it is still today. And you can see the list. It was like auto mechanic, pharmacy, variety store. I don't know. It was all very normal stuff. And I was going through this. And here's proof that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because one of the things on the list was Hamilton Psychiatric Hospital. And I was like, what? I was so shocked. I mean, I was looking at it and I was like, oh, I hope I can get it. Just understand that they didn't actually expect anybody to accept that one, but they didn't know that I was part of the list. So I jumped for it. And I remember I went to the teacher and I was like, I forget her name, but I was like, ma'am, that's the one I want. And they're like, really? Are you sure? Like, they didn't expect anyone to take it. And I was like, yeah, that's the one. Because I was very intrigued. It was so different and I wanted the experience. So I spent, I think it was about 4 months. It was a semester. And basically the job was, you went in there for a couple hours, I think once or twice a week. And basically you showed up, they stuck you in a room, and they had you transcribed patient interviews. So we had to sign confidentiality forms and stuff, and I'm not going to talk about anything specific, But the job itself was you listen to audio recordings of patient interviews and you transcribe them into WordPerfect. So this is even before, Microsoft Word. And that it was just the most interesting job ever. And I learned so much in the way of psychology by listening to those interviews. And I enjoyed it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because when I was walking through Gore Park, that's the feeling I had. When I went to the co-op, you had to walk from the front of the building towards the back. We were in like a back room, and I had to walk. I walked back past patients, tons and tons of patients, and it was the same feeling that I had walking the halls of the HPH that I had walking through Gore Park and walking near the YWCA. And that's unfortunate. And I think I have that unique view to be able to say, okay, I wasn't downtown where most people, they abandon the downtown core when they're done work or whatever. And I saw that and I connected it. And that's not good. So I don't know what the solution is. I'm not going to come in here and say that, city officials do your job. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying city officials do something. And I think last I heard they were going to put down some small houses. And I think that's a terrible idea. It almost seems like it's just basically an excuse to get people to stop talking or to, spend some money in the budget or whatever it might be. But it's a bad idea, and I don't know why they're even considering it. Because basically all you're going to do is give these folks a secret place to go to do the drugs and kill themselves. And eventually the houses will start out nice, and eventually they'll get worse and worse, and it will just be an area that you just don't go near. And yes, that might take away from the core, but you're just putting a Band-Aid on it. It's like in Los Angeles, they had Skid Row, and everybody went to Skid Row that was a undesirable, air quotes, in society. And if you didn't see them, it was like out of sight, out of mind. And that's not going to help these folks. So I don't know what the solution is. The angle I would go is you have to set up shelters that are safe and shelters that have psychiatric care and medical care. So if you want to put your money into anything, do that. Get them all in one area. Give them purpose. Give them assistance. Give them rehab. Give them whatever. But, do something that's more humane than just trying to sweep it under the rug. Anyway, that's a rare rant from me. It's not going to happen very often, don't worry, unless you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, let me know. But I always want a final thing I want to mention is that when I was in the HPH, I actually got to go into the tunnels because I remember we had to do our photocopies, and the only photocopy machine they had was in the basement. And I got to go down into the basement. So the original basement from the insane asylum that was once there exists. I don't know if it's still in the basement of the new hospital, if they finally dug it out. But it was these old tunnels that connected all the different buildings, including Century Manor. And I got to go down there, and by myself too. And even though it was like a bright sunshiny day, it was like darkness in that tunnel with just the light bulbs hanging down. So that was an interesting experience. Okay, let's spin this back up ghostly. Let's do what I do best. Ghost Guy Daniel. Ghost is in the title for a reason. And I'm going to talk about one of the most haunted buildings in the entire downtown core. It is known as the Royal Connaught. Now, I purposely messed up. Don't think I really messed up. I'm a professional. But I purposely messed up at the beginning. I called it the Obsidian. And you might be thinking, oh, is that the Rock? And I was like, no. The Obsidian Hotel is from Umbrella Academy. So the TV show on Netflix, if you haven't watched it, watch it. It's great. But the best part of it is it filmed in Hamilton. All 3 seasons filmed in Hamilton in different parts. But in the most recent season, season 3, don't worry, no spoilers, the hotel that they spend a lot of time in, the entire season is basically inside this hotel, is the Royal Connaught. They took it over, they called it the Obsidian. They have like a fake sign at the top, and they redid the downtown core. They feature the house, which is the old Bank of Nova Scotia, which is just down the street, and they also feature the Gore Park Fountain. So it's very cool to see, and I'm pretty sure they use the inside as well, even though it looks so different. But the windows are the same, and the balconies the same, so they must have used CGI or something. But they did an amazing job. So watch Umbrella Academy Season 3, features the Royal Connaught. But in real life, the Royal Connaught was Hamilton's first luxury hotel, a site of great history. The hotel itself was built in 1914, I believe. But before it was that, it was another hotel called the Waldorf. It was a 5-story, also a very stunning building. Kind of looks like a massive building out of the Wild West. And it was also the Wesleyan Ladies College on the same site, which was a very well-respected college for women back in the day. And it even has a connection to a famous family in the city of Toronto, the Masseys. So the matriarch of the Massey family, Lillian, who's very well known in historic circles, she went to that college. So that, amazing connection gave her the teaching that she needed to run the family empire. The Masseys are extremely connected to history, from Hart all the way down. A Canadian Governor General, a famous American actor, and of course Lillian. I mean, there's just, the list goes on and on. Now, the main ghost connected to the Royal Connaught is a full apparition. And I always tell people that on the tours. I say, okay, she's different, because I'm not talking about like a puff of smoke or an orb. Over the generations, she was talked about as being a full apparition, and they knew what she wore. So, I mean, that tells you how vivid it is. If you can understand what the ghost is wearing, which was a long white Victorian dress, then you know that's something special. Now, the most common experience would happen to maids, to cleaning staff. When it was the hotel, if a cleaning staff member was cleaning out a room, the story went that they could walk into the hallway. It didn't matter what time of day. And a flash would go off at the end of the hall, as if like somebody was taking a picture. It would draw their attention to see a woman standing there in a long white dress, and then they say that she disappeared in front of them. So that was the most common of the experiences. And over all the years, it seemed to be that she only focused on hotel staff. Now, if you use a little bit of logic in this, which I always say, if you can dive deep and kind of dig into that, it's going to give you more information. Well, if she only bothered the hotel staff, considering how many guests that have stayed in that building over the years, thousands and thousands and thousands of guests, and for not any of them to see her, well, this tells me something very clearly, is that because, staff members and cleaning staff are always told to leave the guests alone. So if that's the case, then guests won't see the ghost if that's what she was taught over the years, whether she comes from the Connaught or she comes from the Waldorf or whatever was there before. I don't know. But that one fact there, the fact that guests don't normally see her, can tell me that she was a staff member, maybe part of the cleaning staff. That's why she focuses on them the most. However, there is one time, and I need to preface this. I don't want anybody to shoot me an email and say, Ghost Guy Daniel, you've lost your marbles. I need to preface this by saying the story is over the top. It is the type of story that I don't normally tell on the tour. And if I did, I would also feel those, cringy tingles in my body. But it's over the top. But the reason that it was part of the Downtown Walk for many years is because it was a first-person experience. That kind of balanced it off. So what am I talking about when it comes to first-person experience? Well, this is when somebody directly connected to the experience shares it. Because most ghost stories that you hear, the old campfire trope, you're sitting around the campfire, it's like, this was told to me by a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. It's like so far down the list, you're like, okay, this is the telephone game, and whatever I'm hearing is going to be ridiculous and crazy. But when you have a first-person experience, it's by one of the people who were there. So if they're sharing that with you, and you can ask them questions, you can try and pull out details, and they don't stumble, and they tell you in great detail what happened to them, and you can see the look in their eye as they're telling it, then there's some validity to that. So that's what we're talking about here, because the person who shared the story with us is the main guy who was lounging by the pool. So here's the story. There's a guest, and he's lounging by the pool. Now, the pool used to be located in the back of the building on the first level. It is no longer there with the condos that are currently in the building. It had since been demolished. They basically gutted the entire building and rebuilt it from scratch. So he's lounging by the pool, just leaning back with his eyes closed, trying to relax, and he felt something. Now, he said the air around him got heavy. Now, it's pretty common in the world of the paranormal, is the idea that the air will change to get your attention. It's almost like if you're being surrounded by some type of electrical charge, that the air kind of gets dense, and that we always say heavy. It's the same idea. So an electrical charge equals the charge of ghostly energy entering your space. So the air around this person got dense, and he opens his eyes, and he sees a woman walking alongside the edge of the pool. Now, I noticed her first because she looked distraught. He was afraid that maybe she'd fallen and hurt herself. Noticed her because she was on the edge. She's a bit off balance. That freaked him out. And finally noticed her because she was dressed strangely. His words were not pool attire, but basically it was a long white dress. So the man gets up. He's not going to approach her directly. He runs off to get help. And he grabbed the concierge in the lobby and pulled the man back. Now, they're standing in the doorway that leads to the pool, and they said that the woman stopped and was looking at them. And the concierge was thinking, okay, maybe she's not, completely there. He doesn't want to startle her. She might fall in. So he very softly is about to say something like, maybe, ma'am, could you please come towards us? But as he's about to say it, he stops mid-sentence, because that's when she turned and stepped towards the water. Now, he's waiting for her to splash in, and he's ready to, jump in and get her if he needs to. But she doesn't. Now, this is where it gets very over the top. But again, we get to a confirmation at the end. They said that she walked on the water. Not just walked, that she floated into the pool space a little bit, that she stopped, and then she floated to the middle and disappeared. So when I tell people on the tour that story, which we did for many years, no longer now, but over the years, and I would see the expressions on their faces, I knew they weren't believing it. Because I'd actually, the more skeptical in the group would be shaking their heads and laughing. I was like, probably not the best way to start the tour, because I don't know if they're going to believe anything I say after this. So I got to do that extra little bit and say, okay, wait. Don't judge me yet. Don't judge the story yet. Let me tell you about the guy. So the guy lounging by the pool, we talked to him. He was the fellow who shared the story with us, and we were able to kind of, attain that truth by asking him a question. And I asked him the question. This was me directly asking that guy, how did the woman disappear? And then I was able to gauge his answer. And I'm going to tell you, he very much seemed like he was telling the truth. Or at least he had seen, like he believes he had seen this. Whatever the reasoning is, because he did not miss a beat. He said, well, she stepped forward. She floated out a little bit. And he said when she stopped, it was kind of this eerie stillness. He likened it to pausing a movie, but that she was just completely still for a couple seconds and then quickly moved to the middle of the pool, shook. Like if, again, going back to movies, if a movie reel is failing, how the image will kind of vibrate a bit before it goes away? That's it. She vibrated, she shook, and then vanished. So that's not the kind of detail from somebody who's lying to us. And that's what kind of just blew my mind. Because this was a different type of story that I wasn't used to. put in that detail, put in the fact that it's over the top, put in the fact that it was coming from a first-person experience, and put in the fact that he added such detail to it in such a way that was completely believable. As if somebody was telling me a story about, visiting their uncle and having a beer. That's the kind of detail that they put into it, except, of course, he was more, excited because it's such an amazing story. So in the end, I was a huge believer in this story. Now, we like to change things up a little bit with the tours as the years go by. Some of the stories, they get swapped. Some of them get cut. Or some of them get moved to other tours. This one just got cut just because I wanted to feel a change in the tour. But it's one of the main reasons why I'm telling it on the podcast is because I do believe in it. And hopefully after everything you heard me say in this segment, that you believe in it as well. Okay, that's it, everyone. Shorter show this week, but I got good news for you. I'll use the bit of extra time to tell you that I'm got my first interview finally scheduled. So I added a bonus segment of the strange news that I'm going to attempt to do weekly, or at least every 2 weeks. But I'm also adding in interviews. So I'm hoping to release it for you on Monday. My very first interview was somebody I'm connected to. I've worked with her for years and years. Author and psychic Kate DeJong. She is amazing at what she does. She now writes books related to history, related to ghosts, and she will be my first interviewee, so we'll see how that goes. As I mentioned, hopefully that will be posted on Monday, and hopefully it will become a regular thing. But anyway, thanks for listening, everyone, and I will talk to you next week.